Let's talk about happiness.
Yeah.
I'm glad you searched about that. Oh,
Segue.
Yeah. From death to...
If I could comment on that, just like, I found it so interesting. Because I didn't like, I mean, I did post something on my Facebook feed, Oscar, and got a lot of nice, kind words from people, and it was really nice and felt supported and all that kind of stuff. But when I talk to people in person or whatever, because people at work, I took Friday off and they're, which I'm not, and this is what happened. So, and so, and it's interesting that folks immediately kind of go to like their own like pet situation or whatever that they've had. Maybe it's been recent, like you had or whatever, and I don't know if is that just because is that a way to relate to the situation?
I would say so.
And that kind of thing. But yeah, it's just almost everybody I've talked to, like face to face and in person, has brought up a beloved pet story to talk about. It's been nice, but it's also been kind of somebody I'm like, you had a pet or whatever you had, whatever, and so.
Well, and I think when it comes to that, if you read the things about how to respond to somebody that's grieving, the number one thing is don't talk about yourself. Don't talk about your thing, right? But and yes, and that's true. And however, there's an aspect of it where that feeling of solidarity, knowing that somebody else went through it. And hopefully the idea and the intent isn't to take the thunder from your grief and let's talk about mine. But it is more of saying, just as you were talking about, like this is the first time that you've gone through the death of a pet as an adult. And so perhaps the other adults near you hearing that other people feel that it's heavy, then you can recognize like, okay, yeah, as a 40-something man, it's okay.
Yeah,
right. I mean, and also the whole, the aspect of having to, make the decision to put him down, which is something that, I've never done before. And it was nice to talk to folks who have had to struggle with that same kind of decision, whether or not to do it, or if it wasn't the right choice, and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. So that was helpful.
Yeah.
So.
And I hopefully that's what people are going for. But then, of course, there are the people that are like,
yeah,
me too.
Yeah.
We'll talk about my thing.
Yeah, there's been a couple of people just like, really, that was like, whatever.
That was not helpful, and that was
20 years ago. Sorry, but.
Right, and then that puts you in the spot.
Yeah.
Right, so you're saying I'm sorry,
right.
And this literally just happened to you this weekend.
Right. Yeah.
One of the things that that was suggested to us actually at Yukon High's teacher training, and I did buy it and I read it, was a book called "There's No Good Card for This," on how to respond to other people's grief, whatever kind it is. Somebody comes up to you with something that's really challenging. A death, a disease, their own, somebody else's, and gives you like the list of things to say and not to say. And I mean, it's a really decent book. It's a really good book, and it goes through a lot of different things. I just devoured it in like 2 days. It's like one of those like square books that's thick that has like pictures and things like that. So, but it was really well done.
So did you buy it? Or did you
I did buy it because.
It'd be good to have a reference.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that's like it's a nice reminder of how to just do that thing, because especially as I'm getting older, my own family's dying, and my friends' families are dying, and things like that. And so just when that just happens as you age, that's what happens. and some of the way that you handle it is just by practice. Because I remember like I am not proud of it, but when my best friend at the time, it was a while ago, it was longer ago than I think, her mom died, and that was the first experience of mine with a friend whose parent passed. And in this book, there's no good card for it. One of the things that people do that is not the right thing to do is they back off.
Mm-hmm.
I did. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to do, and I was her best friend. And people were coming to me like, what should I do for her and all that. And I'm like, I don't know if she needs anything, she'll ask. I mean, I said I did all the wrong things. All the wrong things. And then from that point forward, after I had a few years after that to realize like how badly I screwed that up. Like it's just been like, I try so hard. And every experience is different. But yeah, so you can't do that over again. You can't fix that.
Yeah.
Because it was way back then, and you only get one chance to have your best friend's mom die. So, you can just hope that going forward, you can learn from your mistakes or learn from what others do or don't do, and try to make it better. So starting the conversation about happiness, I think it's actually interesting to move from the conversation of death, anything's death, to talking about happiness. You can't control everything. You can't control really much of anything, let's be honest. You can't control negative things happening in your life. Really the only thing that you have control over is your own response, your own reaction to things. And was it just you and I that we were just literally just talking about, like, you can, talking about moderation as far as even like handling even really positive or really negative experiences, keeping everything in moderation, not going to the extreme with feelings or reactions. But the question of happiness, if I were to ask you, are you happy? What would you say? So let me ask you, are you happy? And what would you say?
I'd say yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Even.
Yeah, you're going through this grieving period or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, there's been some periods. I know the question is, because you're not defining like today, yesterday.
Yeah, I did not put a word after the word happy.
Yeah, for your life, for just this moment, or whatever. So it's, I'm sure they're designed to be kind of vague or open or whatever. But if I have to say yes, I am. In terms of like how I feel overall, my life. Is there everything I'm happy about? Everything in my life? Of course not.
Are you happy right now?
So, yeah, I'm happy right now.
Like in this moment?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How about you?
I am happy as well. I equate it to content, being content.
Mm-hmm.
I'm content.
Or you see that it's the same thing?
For me,
Happiness and contentment are the same thing?
not necessarily the same thing, but for me, happiness is equated to being content.
Okay.
So I'm content.
Overall, and are you happy right now?
I'm definitely happy right now. This is my happy spot.
You are.
Yeah.
You're in yoga happiness.
Yeah.
Yes, it's not yoga sadness. That would be bad marketing.
So let me ask you this question: why did you decide to call it?
Yoga happiness, when I was thinking about I knew I wanted to quit my job, but I had to think of what I was going to do. And as I've said before, like, it was sort of, it's embarrassing how long it took me to decide to become a yoga teacher, considering, like, I had known, like, my number one passion for a very long time has been yoga. I've been doing yoga for a very long time. I love teaching people. That was my job, was to teach doctors and nurses how to use computers and software. And I love helping people. Like, not only did I enjoy teaching these doctors and nurses, but I liked meeting them where they were and saying, I recognize you're scared, and I'm going to help you, and I'm going to help you learn to do something you don't think you can do right now. And so I wrote down those 3 things. Like, what are my passions? Yoga, teaching, helping people. It took me forever to put that together into being a yoga teacher. I'm embarrassed. It took me...
Let me think.
Yes, a botanist. Perfect. And it was one morning when I was actually doing my yoga practice that I'm like, I think, yes, I was going into Cobra, and all of a sudden my mind went to my little 3-number list there, and I'm like, had I been able to actually do that, I would have, but I was in Cobra. I'm like, oh my God, it's a yoga teacher. And then it was like within the next day or so, Aaron and I had talked about it, and he's like, wow, okay, that's a lot different than opening a coffee shop. Because that's what I had originally intended to do, but there's high overhead.
In this space, actually, or no?
Not here, no.
Okay.
When I first decided to be a yoga teacher, yes, when I LLC'd my business, April of 2014. I quit my job August of 2014. When I LLC'd my business, it's Yoga Happiness Studio. I've always known I wanted a studio, but my family members told me that I should not open a studio. So I tried for a year to just teach private lessons. That failed. That did not go well. For a number of reasons, because nobody knew me. Like, you need to teach and people know you in order for them to feel comfortable. So no. And I sat down with Aaron, and I was just thinking, like, what is it about yoga that I enjoy? Yoga makes me happy. Yoga, happiness. Simple as that. Absolutely simple as that. It was only secondary that I wanted to bring other people happiness. It was purely like, so my last job, I was a director of a department, managing people, and my number one thing was that employees must be happy in order to make our clients happy. That was the number one thing that I believed, but that was the number one thing that I disagreed with the president of the company. Customers were number one. And so for the years that I was a manager and then in my director position, we were in conflict with that. And I've always felt, I will never change that the employees have to be happy for the client to be happy. Yes, the client is the one that sends in the paycheck, but they're not going to send in the paycheck if they're pissed off and disappointed all the time. And so the whole reason why I wanted to quit and find something else was I wanted to do something I was passionate about. And I equate passion and happiness, those two things together. I absolutely, from the minute that I decided to quit my job, and then when I quit my job, I have never regretted leaving. My pay is cut in third. I am, my budget's changed, everything's changed. We don't go on the vacations we used to. We don't spend the money that we used to. I am so much happier, I can't even explain it. My stress level is lower and much different. And having chosen something that I'm passionate about makes every single day fantastic. I have days that are harder than others. Yes, I get nervous before every single class that I teach. But I'm passionate about it. And that's what makes me happy. So, you know, if for some reason I can't, so I do have a day job, right? I still do the same thing. I still work with this healthcare software. I still work with doctors and nurses and clinics and things like that. But I'm in a different environment. I get to choose my time. I get to choose who I work with. I get to choose my projects. And I'm happier doing that. And so that eventually will peter out. And so that's part of the reason why I'm really excited about the move to the new space, because I feel like I'll be able to do more with yoga happiness. If I were to ever have to get a different type of day job, absolutely, I will always go for something that I'm going to enjoy. I don't care what the dollar amount is. I don't care what I get paid. I will always make it work. But I refuse to do a job that I'm not happy with anymore. Refuse it. I did it for far too long. Because I was miserable. My body hurt. Because it was more than just stressed out. Because the pain in my body felt like my skin hurt when my mom was going through her thing. Because of that stress. But the stress from my job was so much worse because I was in the wrong thing. I wasn't happy at all. It was all a facade. Every single day was a lie. And so I felt that physically in my body.
There wasn't any aspects of the job that were
not enough, because especially where it's that old thing, like when you get up into management, you don't get to do the stuff that you love anymore. I love teaching. I love training these doctors and nurses, and I never got to do that anymore because I had to train other people. I had to train people how to do that. The thing that I used to do, that's what I was teaching people how to do. I enjoy managing. You know, I like creating environments and helping people learn and all that. So I got to manage people, but the stress of having to fight with upper management, with the CEOs and all of that, wasn't worth it because I was never going to really fully be able to do, you know, my best. It wasn't even do what I want. I wasn't able to do my best because I was being forced into a position that I wasn't really fit for. I wasn't made for it. So there are studies that prove that happiness makes you healthier. Being around positive reinforcement, positive people, positive environments, which is why it's really important for me that this studio is a space that feels good to people. The research absolutely is there that proves positivity and happiness makes you healthier. One of our students, she's a philosopher. She's going to Ohio State to get her PhD in philosophy. I believe it's her PhD. And she told me about this grant that this other doctor got in St. Louis, I believe. I think you were there when she said it. And like the biggest grant ever, you know, $3.3 million to do this research on happiness and well-being. And this started in 2016, ended just a couple of months ago. And so all of these researchers and so forth from across the world, they had to submit to become part of this research project and all of that. And they picked, I think it was like 22 groups to actually do some research. So the website or the video that I posted that we're going to talk about next week is Ed Diener talking about happiness as a virtue. So I'll let you watch it, 45 minutes, it's fantastic. He's extremely entertaining, so it's not like a sloggy 45 minutes. For today's discussion, sort of, I mean, we've got 20 minutes left. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was just the first couple of sentences of this book and see what people's thoughts are. So The Art of Happiness, I brought it up last week. Howard Cutler interviews the Dalai Lama, and basically over the course of several years of going to Dharamsala to interview him, as well as going to these presentations, discussions, was teachings that the Dalai Lama gave at Arizona. I think it's Arizona University, one of them. So anyway, so he put this all into a book, and he edited it, compiled it, and he talks about it in his introduction, and the Dalai Lama approved it. The Dalai Lama says, "I believe that the very purpose of our life is to seek happiness. That is clear. Whether one believes in religion or not, whether one believes in this religion or that religion, we are all seeking something better in life. So I think the very motion of our life is towards happiness." And then later on down here, Howard, who's a psychologist, so Dr. Cutler, he asks, "But is happiness a reasonable goal for most of us?" I asked. "Is it really possible?" And the Dalai Lama says, "Yes, I believe that happiness can be achieved through training the mind." The byline of this is a handbook for living. I actually loaned this to a friend of mine who I just recently, she's going through sort of a change in life. She's, I don't know how much she is, 50-something or whatever. And I was trying to explain like Buddhism to her, and she picked up some other book on Buddhism, and she's like, "God, this is really heavy, there's a lot to it, and really deep, and blah, blah." And I'm like, how about this? In this book, he like breaks down the very basic stuff of what Buddhists believe and how the tradition of Buddhism and the practices and things like that. Makes it very simple and easy. And this isn't me trying to promote Buddhism whatsoever. But what I like about it is that the first 4 chapters are about the purpose of life, the right to happiness, the sources of happiness, training the mind for happiness, reclaiming our innate state of happiness. So my question for you guys, do you agree with the statement that you feel that the Dalai Lama says the purpose of our life is to seek happiness? And if you disagree with it, can you explain why? Because we've talked about this before, the purpose of life. What's that?
Can I get back to you?
Yes, you can get back to me on this. So we can even talk about this next week. Because I remember one time, we had I don't know if it was Learner Series or Yoga Talks, we talked about the purpose of life. Maybe in a different context, maybe with different verbiage. And you actually disagreed with, I believe that we actually were talking about the purpose of life being happiness, or something very similar.
I was going to say, I was like, didn't we talk about this?
You contradicted that, so I'm interested in if maybe something's changed, because that was even before you decided to become a yoga teacher.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know that I would agree with that. I still don't agree with that. The purpose of life is to seek happiness.
Do you think that there's a purpose to life?
Yeah, I think that there's a purpose to life, and I think it's maybe to become this, full person that you can be, this human, the most you can be. Okay, so I think that's kind of like the purpose of life, and I guess the trouble, or where I get tripped up on the idea of the purpose of life is seeking happiness. Now, maybe in what he is talking about in terms of happiness is becoming a more complete person, a more complete you. I just think there's a lot of baggage with that term. Maybe some other people might think happiness is just like stuff or whatever, and so I think that kind of confuses things.
Well, so let me get more specific. So the primary aspect of finding happiness is reducing suffering. And as we learn in yoga as well as in Buddhism, since they're very related, if you look at the yamas and niyamas,
right,
all those things are talking about the things that you can do or not do in order to help yourself to reduce your suffering. Release attachment. So they're the things, So release your attachment to materialistic things, releasing your attachment to foods that don't make you healthy. So try to actually be healthy. And, bad relationships and, negative thoughts, harmful thoughts, ahimsa. So all of these things, and then, so if you if you take it from that standpoint, recognizing that it's, that number one, coming into it, just giving you the first sentence, the first 3 sentences of this entire book, where he then backs up everything that he's talking about. And Cutler does not, he doesn't go easy on the Dalai Lama, who is like he's up there with the Pope and maybe possibly higher, as far as, being a spiritual leader in the world. He contradicts him quite a bit. He confronts him quite a bit. And the case that the Dalai Lama makes is very well thought out. Obviously, he's very well read. And is not only does the Dalai Lama come to this from a Buddhist standpoint, but he also pulls in the theories and the principles of other religions as well, and other thoughts. And he even comes to this and says, you don't have to be a Buddhist. You don't have to have a religion. If you want to come to this from a purely scientific standpoint, he talks about the health and well-being of being happy, how it builds your immune system, and all of these things. So, if you're not excited about the word happiness, then perhaps putting it in a different way is the purpose of life is to reduce your suffering. But knowing that reducing your suffering means all of the things that we talk about in the yamas and the niyamas.
Mm-hmm.
How about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's helpful to think of it that way. But I just, again, and coming from the Western, consumerist culture that I'm like a part of, or the fabric of, whatever, it's difficult to like change my framework there. And so,
why do you have to change your framework? What do you mean by that?
Because the framework I have of what happiness is what is being constantly bombarded to me in society and in the media, and this is what happiness is. This is what happiness
That's what they say happiness is.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
So,
okay. Yeah.
So that's
then what's happiness for you?
That's the thing. So I mean, maybe I guess the thing that I would like to approach it from is not, well, to be seeking happiness, but not to be. I mean, I think the goal maybe, happiness is that sounds cheap. Happiness is great, because you remember in Bette Randell's book when she talks about santosha and contentment and the paradox of that, that you can't really seek contentment. Okay, it's not, because seeking it is like not being content, kind of thing. And so that's maybe where I'm getting tripped up here, and because I want to just be happy.
Okay.
Okay, I just want to be happy, and I don't want it to be something I'm like, the struggle of seeking to be happy, and because.
Who's saying you have to struggle?
Again, it's just like this framework that is like,
So do you feel burdened by what our culture, or the Western culture, has put in you?
How can you not?
I am not.
Really? I mean.
Oh yeah.
I'm so not in.
So I mean, it's just everywhere. It's just in everything. It's just like, and it's just so hard to like. It's at least for me to because it's just like I can't like just even ride my bike to work without being bombarded, billboards or whatever, of things saying, if you want to feel happy, stop that at this brew pub, or whatever you want to like, be happy, so it's just kind of like, it's just always there, and to like, really, I think if you spent a lot of time like away from that, because the time I've spent in like Nicaragua and where there's not as much like commercialism, there's not as much, in your face advertising and all that kind of stuff, or even just like if I'm on a camping trip for like an extended period of time or whatever and stuff like that. then I can feel like sort of, you know, and, you know, but so yeah, so that's and it's just again, I don't have all the answers obviously, and I'm just trying to like and exploring this, but I mean, the idea of seeking happiness just still unsettling to me.
Why are you seeking happiness? You don't
'Cause that's
think
what-
that it's already in there?
Oh, I think, yeah, I mean, but
The purpose
of life.
You're putting different words into it.
Okay.
You just said seeking. He didn't say seeking. The purpose of life is to be happy.
Yeah, you better-
Oh, no, you're right. You're right.
So
You said the purpose of life is to seek happiness. Okay, this is true. Yes, so you're
Wait a
correct.
minute.
No, I apologize. I can admit when I'm wrong. But I think that it might be a valuable practice, yoga practice, to investigate this burden that you feel, because being able to find happiness only in quiet places where it's not there, where this burden isn't there, is going to be very challenging.
Yeah, and definitely, and it's keen to, you know, because I've been journaling and thinking about Santosha it was an assignment for my yoga teacher training.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I'm supposed to like do this for months with this concept. It's one of the neons. So for part of this period I was doing this is like when we took our trip to Vegas, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'm just like, what the crap? How am I going to find contentment here? Okay, in a place that's like where it's just like 24/7, just in your face with like, you need this, you need that, you need this, you need that. This will make me happy. This is like, look at this, look at me, all this kind of stuff, right? And so it was helpful in reading a book, and in terms of like, all right, you know, part of the practice in Santosha and contentment is to focus on gratitude, okay? And so that gave me like this space to be like, yeah, okay, even though I'm here in this place which is kind of like just, you know, so much sensory overload and all that kind of stuff, I was able to focus on the fact that I was grateful that I was spending time with my kids, you know, and I really enjoyed that, and that really helped me feel a level of contentment. And I was visiting with some friends I hadn't seen in a long time, you know, so that really allowed me to like to do that. So yeah, so you're right. I can't just be like,
I'm going to go to my cave.
Yeah, right. You know,
Yeah.
Practice pratyahara.
Yes.
And just be a total sensory.
Of course, that's why it's easy for those guys.
Yeah.
They don't live in the West.
Right. Yeah. And but it is. I mean, if you ever spend like extended time away from this environment and then come back into it, it's just like, because you know, and my estranged, when she would spend some extended time in Nicaragua, like 5-6 weeks, and one period a couple of years ago, she actually got offered to go into like deep into the jungle and do some work with some indigenous folks there. And so she was totally off like the grid kind of thing or whatever. And I just got messages from her via satellite phone every like once in a while kind of thing. And so she came back here and it was just like, I mean, just a simple trip to Giant Eagle was just like, it was just like, you know, she was just like, I can't handle this, you know, it's just like, it's too much, you know. I'm like, what, you know, it's Giant Eagle, you know, we're just grocery shopping. And it was just way too, you know, so,
Sure.
so
Well,
it's just like,
that's certainly extremes.
yeah, but I'm just saying, I guess the point is that we have just become so desensitized to all that and not recognizing what we're in, you know, kind of thing. You know, it's just kind of like, you know, so I don't know. It's just kind of like, and it's interesting. I wouldn't, when you talk about it as like burden or something, like I'm burdened by this, and I was like, man, is that right? And I'm like, well, maybe it is. I am being, feel kind of burdened by this, and because I initially did not connect with that, with that phrase, whatever, as being burdened, but just as it colors my experience kind of thing, But yeah, I think maybe burden is a perspective, but anyway.
And I do see where you're coming from, I guess. That like, I'm off during the summer, so I kind of have my peace. I've created my peace, my routine that works for me. And then going back into a work environment, it's not as challenging with the children as it is with the adults that I work with. And they're kind of their noise. That they're saying and their things. So I do see where you're coming from. Sometimes my only way to cope is either, like I was saying, go out at lunchtime and sit in my car in the neighborhood, or sometimes I put my headphones on and listen to music just to kind of desensitize.
From all the sensory overhead or whatever,
and chatter. And I think as an introvert, it's hard for me to make small talk and to become involved, in kind of small talk. If I talk, it's going to be on a deeper level. So.
So what do you think about this
So, part of happiness is well-being, is also self-care, taking care of yourself. So recognizing that, there are things that we've chosen in life, such as jobs, such as to live in Clintonville, such as whatever. And in order to continue to do the things that you've chosen to do, that you love to do, that you like to do, you still have to build in those times of self-care, of, enjoying your bike ride to work, enjoying that as opposed to driving to work and being in gridlock. And I know you do it also for environmental reasons, but recognizing the moments that you can create these little pockets of, I don't want to say, it's not, obviously not Pachihara, but something very similar where you can put yourself into this sort of state where everything is just sort of in the periphery. Because when I was thinking of you talking about Vegas, I think of tomorrow I've got my meditation practice with my meditation teacher. And part of what I'm practicing is, not pushing the thoughts away, because that's not what you do. You're allowing the thoughts to be there, but not to attack or not to, whatever it is,
Try to change them or whatever,
I remember so I've probably had 5 or 6 sessions with him, and it's been a process. And, going from being inundated with all this stuff to saying, okay, these thoughts are there, and I can't get rid of these thoughts because some of them are necessary. How am I going to teach this class today? How am I going to, I have to balance the budget. I have to do all these business things and pay my mortgage. But not right now. This 15 minutes before class is my time to practice my meditation. And I remember when I very first started, I read some quote in the mindfulness book that's something like, as you continue to practice meditation, at some point, you're trying to find the gap between your thoughts at first, but then eventually you become the gap. And I've thought of that in a very physical way, where I was I sat here and I visualized all of these things that were bombarding me, coming to me from the sides, and then I was I was clear-cutting this path and then pushing them off to the side. And then when I told my meditation teacher about that, he's like, you can't push them away. That's not what we're trying to do. First of all, you're missing the point. I'm putting words into his mouth. Anyway. So what he was trying to get me to do was just simply pay attention to my breath. That was it. And allow all of these extraneous things to just sort of soften. They're still there because they need to be there. But it goes back to, I can control my reactions to things. I can't control that the things are there. The billboards, the commercials, although if you're streaming on the internet, you can pass through things or whatever. But the things that come at you, the thing that you control is the way that you react to those things.
Right. So would you say that you create your happiness? Is that, I mean, because how, because that's an intriguing, I'd like to think about that some more because, because you can't control, like I said, you can't control, the weather, the things going on around you, all that kind of stuff. You control your response to those things, and you always can respond, to mean people, kindness. You always can respond to, a tough situation in a loving way. All these different ways that you can respond, and to me, that's like maybe, so you're creating. I don't know. I remember this little graphic I saw. I'll have to dig it up because I was thinking about it. As far as like when I started thinking about happiness, and I had these two little cartoon characters, and one is holding this little flower thing, and you've probably seen it before, maybe. And the other one's like, "Where did you get it?" And it's like, "I made it myself." And it's happiness, whatever. I've been looking all over that. Where did you get it? I made it myself. And
so there's a fine line. So at first, when you said perhaps you're creating happiness, my instinct was to first think, yeah, but it's inside me already. But when you are creating something, you're just simply bringing it out of yourself.
Okay.
So it is already there. So I would argue that I'm kind of going to challenge the Dalai Lama in the using the word
watch out.
Sorry, Tenzin. But I think that I feel like it's like the idea that enlightenment is already in you. So I'm sort of I'm learning to hear that. Yes. It's already in you, and the answers are already there. Everything you need is already there. It's the fact of like maybe peeling back all the gunk. The stuff that's like these, the media and the advertising and all this stuff, and the political climate and the weather and all this stuff. But if you peel that all away, if you take a nice shower and you wash off all the gunk, then it's there, and, yes, I created it, but with things that were already there. And so I think perhaps in this, perhaps the quest for happiness isn't that you really need to go anywhere. It's that you're letting it out.
And there's definitely different
You're
techniques.
allowing it to come out.
Yeah, you're allowing it to come forth. There's different techniques and practices.
Because I would argue also that there are plenty of people who don't feel that they deserve happiness.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And so that idea of like allowing happiness. So I think that for different people, there's going to be a different verb that you use. I'm going to allow it. I'm going to create it. I'm going to find it. I'm going to make it. However, I would say I would be very cautious when talking about the word. There's a difference between make and create in my mind. In that, I feel very strongly that there is value in trying to feel happy, be happy, content, at peace, healthy, safe, well, in any kind of environment. That you can't, lighting a stick of incense, only finding happiness at a yoga studio, only finding happiness and peace at my coffee shop. that can't be the only place.
Well, it sounds like you
gotta
say
find
only
it
you're putting limitations on it.
Yeah,
on how
right,
it is.
right. So, you know, I can only meditate if I sit in this kind of a way with my incense. Well, then you're only ever going to find that meditative feeling, vibe, if you've got Nag Champa, you've got this pillow, you're in this place, you're in that corner with this lighting, with this candle. Then you're having to create this environment that you're never going to be satisfied unless it's just this. It's almost like an attachment, again, so it's with that. So, so I think being careful with that notion, but trying to recognize that it's in you, it's already there, and trying to feel that happiness and that peace. It may only start as like a little feeling. Talking about the idea of working with people with trauma, things like that. Just even starting with like, there's a meditation kind of mindfulness practice where you literally like start with, okay, if I can't find anything good in the world, my pinky is okay right now. And then you start to slowly move through your body. Like you, little by little, like it's okay for my pinky to feel okay. My pinky's happy right now, And you move in on your fingers and your palms and your toes, and then you slowly move up and you're like, yeah, my whole body, my heart feels good right now. It's okay. I'm allowed to feel good. I feel safe. My brain feels good. And so, for some people it may be a minute thing, a minute little process to actually feel happy. So we will talk more about this next week. I do highly recommend this book. No, I'm not trying to convert people to being a Buddhist. As the Dalai Lama says, take what you like, leave the rest. He says that about all of the Buddhist stuff, yes. That's so Buddhist. And I do recommend watching the video. There'll be a link on Facebook and on the Patreon page for this. So next week, just to sort of give a quick update, next week we will still have yoga talks here. And then the last day at the studio will be Friday the 14th. The AM classes are going to be the last classes we have in the studio. And then the studio, this location is closing. What I would like to do, so the very first official class at the new space, 3630 North High Street, is going to be October 1st, which is a Monday. So AM classes on that Monday will be the first classes. However, I am considering I would like to, I should be getting the keys to the new place next week. I'd like to, just get it fixed up a little bit, and then perhaps the first real, the first sort of soft class that we have is yoga talks, having it in the new space, and that's just a way of us sort of slowly easing into using the space and things like that. Yeah.
Good deal.
Well, thank you both.
Exciting.
And we'll see you next time. Hi everyone, thank you for watching. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you in person instead of just typing on the screen or just doing a little bit of a voiceover. I want to thank everyone who is not only a follower but also a Patreon patron supporter. Chris and Nancy, one of the first ones. I greatly appreciate your support that helped to kickstart other people coming aboard as well. Lauren and Athne, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Hope to see you guys in the studio soon, by the way. Vince, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate also your input and your advice and suggestions, because I know you also support other Patreon creators. Jeremy and Marianne, thank you so much. Your presence is also very much appreciated as well. I'm thrilled to continue doing this. I love making these videos. I love sharing yoga with everyone. And I'm really excited to be moving to the new studio. So I hope that you as Patreon supporters will take advantage of the streaming classes that I will be providing as an incentive. So for those of you who are not yet Patreon patrons, keep your eyes open for that. I'm hoping to get that up and running in the next couple of weeks. Definitely shortly after I open the new studio. So the new studio is opening Monday, October 1st. This is 2018. And I would really like to have the streaming starting October 1st. That's a Monday. We'll see. Those are my hopes. I still have to get into the space and figure out where to put cameras and a mic and things like that. So again, thank you so much for your support. I hope you enjoy this. Please, if you have any sort of comments or questions, if you have a suggestion for a discussion point, a topic for a month, or even just a day of yoga talks, please shoot me an email, put it in the comments. I like to hear, I like to know that people are listening and enjoying. And if there's something you don't like, bring it up. Let's have a discussion. I think one of the things that's important these days is being able to have good discussions, even if we disagree. That's okay. You know, I would like to think that I'm correct on most things, but it's possible that I'm not. You know, I'm not the definitive answer, and this is why we have these discussions. We're talking about things and learning from each other. So, thank you so much for watching. Please like or subscribe, and I hope to talk to you next time. Have a great week. Bye, guys.